Welcome to this deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise and get to the core of things using our sources to guide us.
Glad to be here.
So today we're digging into something I think a lot of us wonder about while scrolling. Is social media actually making it harder for us to think, deeply, critically?
It's a big question.
Yeah. And our main source is this really interesting YouTube video transcript from Ashara Wilson. She basically argues there's a decline in nuance and critical thinking online.
A compelling case.
Yeah.
Definitely worth unpacking. Social media is so embedded now, understanding its effects is, crucial.
Right. So our mission today is to really get into her arguments, see what makes sense, and figure out the key issues she's raising.
Let's do it.
Okay, so Ashara doesn't mince words. She suggests social media can feel like, I think the quote was, a wasteland for everybody's last two brain cells.
Wow. Okay. Strong start.
Yeah. And she pins this on a decline in two specific things: nuance and critical thinking. Maybe we should quickly define them.
Good idea. So nuance. The transcript mentions the dictionary definition. Subtle differences in meaning. Understanding things aren't just black and white.
Seeing the layers, the complexity.
Exactly. It's about interpretation, not just taking things at face value.
Got it. And critical thinking.
That's the objective analysis part. Looking at an issue, evaluating it logically, trying to put aside your own biases to form a judgment.
Okay. So nuance is seeing the complexity. Critical thinking is analyzing it objectively. And Ashara's argument is social media undermines both.
Precisely. And she points to three main reasons why.
Right, the big three: short attention spans, illiteracy, and individualism. Let's tackle attention spans first.
Yeah, the transcript notes we don't have definitive long-term studies proving this yet, but anecdotally, it feels like something's shifting.
You definitely hear people talk about it, and she links it to the rise of, TikTok, Reels, even quick tweets, short-form stuff.
And the idea is that this constant stream of, quick, easily consumed entertainment encourages hopping around rather than really diving deep into any one thing.
Like training wheels for your brain, but maybe you never take them off?
Sort of. And it impacts the type of content that succeeds. Short form often needs a strong hook, right?
Emotion, especially anger, seems like.
Yeah, the transcript calls it rage bait. It also favors really controversial takes, big generalizations, sensationalism, anything to grab you fast.
Because there's just no time or space in, say, a 60-second video for a really layered, multidimensional perspective.
Exactly. The nuance gets lost.
The transcript had that example of a 1-minute video needing distracting visuals, like Subway Surfer playing alongside it, just to keep people watching.
Which is kind of wild, isn't it? Like, the main content isn't engaging enough on its own for even a minute.
And then the contrast she drew. A simple statement like makeup is bad for women's self-esteem gets clicks.
Yeah, it's punchy.
But a more nuanced take, acknowledging good and bad aspects, different contexts, that's longer, more complex.
And likely to lose people's attention halfway through, according to the argument.
It feels true. We see those quippy, oversimplified phrases everywhere, like, if you wanted to, he would.
Oh, yeah. That one's huge.
And it just ignores so much complexity about why people do or don't do things. It's the opposite of nuance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It reduces complex human interaction to a simple, often harsh formula.
There was also that point about film and TV writing supposedly getting more blatant, like spelling things out because they assume viewers aren't fully paying attention.
Yeah, the audience might be multitasking, scrolling on their phone while watching.
So the overall effect, she argues, is we get trained to just grab headlines, catchphrases.
Rather than engaging deeply. And that makes it harder to appreciate or even notice nuance when it is presented.
Okay, that makes sense. So factor 1, short attention spans fueled by short-form content. Factor 2 she brings up is illiteracy.
Right, and this goes beyond just attention. It's about the foundational skills needed for critical thought.
The transcript cites some pretty sobering statistics for the U.S. in 2022, like 21% of adults illiterate and over half reading at or below a 6th grade level.
Yeah, and it links this strongly to systemic issues: poverty, underfunded school. It's not just an individual failing.
Absolutely. But the impact on critical thinking is the focus here. How does literacy connect?
Well, reading is fundamental for understanding context, for analysis, for comparing ideas. If your reading comprehension is limited,
then analyzing complex topics like the transcript mentions women's rights or separation of church and state becomes really, really difficult.
You might be more susceptible to, those half-baked ideas in short videos because you lack the tools to really dissect them critically.
The transcript mentions a link between reading level and analytical ability that they often track together.
Which makes sense. Engaging with complex text builds those analytical muscles.
There's that analogy, the spiders and flies one.
Ah, yes, where someone doesn't see the connection, the unintended consequences, because they aren't thinking critically about the whole system, a failure to see the bigger picture.
It also touches on this resistance people have to being wrong. That feels very relevant online.
Doesn't it? The idea that people cling to their first take,
Yeah.
even with new info, maybe because they're afraid of looking, well, unintelligent.
Which totally shuts down learning, right? And accepting that maybe an issue is more nuanced than you first thought.
Absolutely. Learning requires humility sometimes, and the transcript connects this to a kind of anti-intellectualism trend.
Like the backlash against higher education, while acknowledging real issues like cost.
Right. Valid criticisms exist. But the argument is that sometimes the value of learning, of encountering diverse ideas, of just expanding your mind gets dismissed too easily.
And being able to see both sides, like the pros and cons of college, that's nuanced thinking right there.
Exactly.
Then there's the killjoy thing, that idea that if you try to analyze something or bring up deeper points, you're just being negative.
Yeah, drawing on Sarah Ahmed's concept.
Yeah.
Sometimes pointing out the problems, being critical, is necessary, even if it makes people uncomfortable or disrupts the, superficial vibe.
It highlights a discomfort with deep engagement, maybe, especially if it challenges easy enjoyment.
Could be. And all this ties into the final point under literacy, media literacy.
Which isn't just reading words, but critically reading media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Understanding narrative, spotting bias, checking sources, knowing persuasive tricks.
And the transcript suggests lower literacy correlates with being more susceptible to misinformation, to those simplistic, non-nuanced narratives.
Because you lack the tools to critically evaluate the fire hose of information coming at you online.
Okay. So short attention spans and literacy issues create fertile ground for a lack of nuance. What's the third factor?
Individualism, or as the transcript calls it, kind of cheekily, what about medeism?
Okay. What does that mean in this context?
It's this idea that a really strong focus on the self, amplified by the constant sharing culture online, leads to this mentality where everything has to revolve around me, main character syndrome, essentially.
Yeah, you see something online, and if it doesn't directly apply to your specific situation, your first instinct isn't just to scroll past, but to make it about you.
Yeah, the transcript calls it the what about me effect, demanding accommodations or trying to shift the focus to your unique circumstances, even when you're clearly not the target audience.
That bean soup video example was perfect. A recipe for bean soup, and the comments are full of, can I make this without beans?
Exactly. It completely misses the point because the focus is so intensely personal.
Or the other analogy, someone wishes everyone a happy weekend, and a student replies aggressively about their bad week.
It shows this, almost childish inability to grasp a general sentiment or see beyond personal experience.
Why does this happen? The transcript suggests a few things.
One is just Western culture being very hyper-individualistic already, prioritizing the individual over the group.
And social media platforms kind of feed into that, constantly asking what's on your mind, share your photos, your thoughts.
Right. It can create an inflated sense that everyone wants or needs your specific take on everything.
Plus the algorithms, like the TikTok For You page, it feels like everything is curated just for you.
Which can create this false impression that all content should be relevant to you personally. No. If it's not, maybe something's wrong with the content, not your expectations.
So the consequence of this intense individualism is...
It hinders our ability to engage with perspectives outside our own bubble. It limits understanding of diverse experiences, complex issues that don't directly impact us, makes empathy harder, maybe.
Yeah. If it's not about me, why should I care or try to understand its nuances?
Exactly.
So looking back at these three factors, short attention spans, literacy challenges, and this intense individualism.
They aren't separate issues, are they? They seem deeply interconnected.
How so?
Well, short attention spans make deep reading less likely, potentially impacting literacy skills over time. Low literacy makes you more vulnerable to simplistic, emotionally charged content that thrives in short-form media.
And individualism might make you less interested in engaging with nuanced perspectives that don't center your experience, reinforcing the cycle.
Yeah, they seem to feed off each other, creating this online environment where maybe nuance and critical thinking sometimes struggle to survive.
It really does make you pause and think about your own habits online.
Definitely. Do you find yourself skimming, reacting instantly based on a headline, getting annoyed when something doesn't immediately resonate with your life?
It's easy to fall into those patterns, I think.
So maybe the takeaway for you listening is to be more aware of this, to consciously think about how you're consuming information online.
Could we benefit from actively seeking out longer reads sometime, or different viewpoints? Really questioning where information comes.
Being more intentional, perhaps. Choosing engagement over just react.
Yeah, this deep dive is really just scratching the surface, of course.
But hopefully it gives you some things to chew on.
We definitely encourage you to reflect on it. Maybe look into some of the research yourself on attention, literacy, social media's psychological effects. Form your own conclusions.
Because ultimately, that process is critical thinking.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us for this exploration.